You know, there's this idea that if you have a fatty liver, it's an isolated problem. It's an individual problem that is probably not related to other organs. That is actually not quite true. So if you have a fatty liver, you also have fatty organs. They should really call a fatty liver just fatty organs because the fat is going to spill off into your muscles, into your heart and vessels, into the pancreas, into the kidney, and many other organs. Now, what's the significance of that? Well, the more fat you have in your organs, the less function you're going to have in those organs. And you're also going to get inflammation. So, for example, the more fat in your liver, the less your liver is going to be able to produce bile, the less your liver is going to be able to convert poisons into harmless particles, the less the liver is going to make certain proteins in your blood, which end up giving you edema in your legs, the less the liver is going to make certain clotting factors, and the more you're going to have bleeding and issues with if you bruise yourself. One of the best predictors for a fatty liver is ALT. That's a liver enzyme test. So if you have high ALT as a blood test, chances are you have a fatty liver. Another good test would be high levels of triglycerides, probably because the body now doesn't have the capacity of bile salts or bile salt production to be able to emulsify and break down those triglycerides and get rid of them. And the other problem with the fatty liver is up to 20% of people with a fatty liver end up having cirrhosis. That's scar tissue of the liver. It's much more serious, and you have a lot of other problems, including being on the list for a liver transplant. Now, the question is, how do you reverse a fatty liver? If you haven't seen my video on how to reduce liver fat by 50% in 14 days, I put a link down below. But you need to get on a low carb diet. You need to reduce your insulin. When you reduce your insulin, another hormone comes in there called glucagon, and glucagon rapidly burns fat. It turns fat into ketones, and glucagon is triggered by low insulin or a low carb diet. All right, thanks for watching. I will see you in the next video.
Hey, before you go, if you're benefiting from any of my content, I would.
So today I want to talk about how to get more restorative sleep. Not just more sleep, but the type of sleep that recharges you by adding vitamin D. So many people wake up tired, okay? They're actually sometimes more tired than when they went to bed. They don't sleep through the night. They either can't get to sleep, they can't stay asleep, or they wake up feeling tired. They have dark circles underneath their eyes, puffy eyes, bloodshot eyes, or they might have sleep apnea. Or during the day, they need multiple naps because they haven't slept at night. So we do know that stress can prevent you from sleeping, but vitamin D many times is behind high levels of cortisol. High cortisol can deplete your vitamin D, and low vitamin D can raise your cortisol. And cortisol is the stress hormone. Now, you have vitamin D receptors in many places in the body, including the central nervous system. So deep in your brain, you have receptors for vitamin D. And one of the functions of vitamin D, among the many, is muscle paralysis during the delta wave sleep. So when we're talking about restorative sleep, we're talking about the ability to turn off when you're sleeping at night, okay? So you're not like laying there half awake. So vitamin D helps to turn off the muscles. So if you have restless leg syndrome, for example, that would be a vitamin D deficiency. And sometimes it's a vitamin B1 deficiency. But when you take vitamin D, it allows your body to get in a full, resting, deep delta wave sleep. And that's how you recharge. Now, the amount of vitamin D that people are told to take, the RDAs are roughly between 600 to, I think, 800 IUs, okay? That is the amount determined to prevent rickets. But it's definitely not the amount to create the therapeutic effect for many other conditions, like especially if you have autoimmune conditions like MS or rheumatoid arthritis or lupus, or getting your deep sleep, or getting rid of low back pain. You're going to need more of a therapeutic effect, minimally at 20,000 IUs. Now, it might sound like a lot, 20,000 IUs, but 40,000 IUs is only 1 milligram. So 20,000 IUs
is really only 1/2 milligram. Okay, so there's two main concerns I want to talk about. One is a concern that people have with, I don't want to have a toxic effect of vitamin D. I have a specific video just on that you can watch down below. All the toxic effects of vitamin D really come from the higher levels of calcium in the blood. It doesn't have to do with vitamin D itself. It has to do with what it does to calcium. And there's so many things you can do to prevent the high levels of calcium building up in the blood that I made a special video for that. But many times you're going to need a lot more vitamin D to fix your sleep cycles. Now, one of the reasons it's very difficult to get your vitamin D from food. The next reason is that people are inside and are not getting enough sunlight. And there's one more reason I want to talk about, and it has to do with the vitamin D receptors being altered genetically. But a mutation is a sudden change in the genetics that can happen this lifetime. So let's say you're exposed to a certain chemical, it can affect the genes. There are several mutations in the vitamin D receptor, and it's called polymorphism. So your vitamin D receptor is having a hard time absorbing vitamin D. So if you take the normal amounts of vitamin D, it doesn't go in. So you just have to take more. Now the question is, why are we developing these alterations in the receptor? I have some theories. We don't know exactly, but vitamin D deficiency trends have been following the introduction of GMO foods, the introduction of glyphosate. That is my theory on why this is happening, because of what this chemical can do to our receptors, but there could be other reasons. All right, so here's what I recommend if you have a sleep problem. Start with 20,000 IUs. If that doesn't handle it, go up to 30,000 IUs. Take vitamin K2, take some magnesium, and also watch the video down below on how to overcome any toxic effects that vitamin D might have when you're increasing the amounts. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Hey, before you go, would you mind putting
天哪，半夜。
自式生存游戏的玩家才会持有这么多的玩具空气枪。虽然经过测试，枪支没有杀伤力，但拿出来威吓人就有违法的疑虑。事后，男子将依照违反社会秩序维护法移送侦办。东新闻戴志坚在宜兰报道。
信赖的员工竟然是小偷，还把2600万的现金藏在车站。桃园呢有一名谢姓老板，他要投资黄金市场，所以呢他就把4000万的现金，他交给了信任的员工，请员工来帮他存进银行。而想不到这名员工呢，竟然伙同了另外一名下属，他们运走了2600万之后，先变装，在一起呢把钱藏在了台北车站的地下置物柜。一个人先拿走了50万，另外一个人再拿走了200万。 逃往了花莲，而事后呢，老板当然赶紧报警了。这员工还谎称说他什么都不知道。最后呢，是因为警方已经揪出了这名员工就是变装领钱，所以戳破了他的谎言，让这名老板呢也非常的痛心跟难过，说真的是信错人。
打开置物柜，千万巨款就藏在这儿。2个手提袋拿出来，一打开，好几叠钞票，初步估算有2000多万现金。
我回去再点，你说这边是50万吗？
草丛堆中再找出50万，老板怎么样也没想到，跟着自己7、8年的员工会见钱眼开，把钱 A 走。案件会曝光，原来是一名在桃园开贸易公司的谢姓老板，从事黄金买卖，和黄姓员工一起北上扛着4000万现金，要存进银行，但员工捧着钱却只汇了1400万就借口离开，打电话给老板说临时有事会找人继续汇，将钱交给另一名田姓员工，要对方把钱再到台北车站，2个人再汇合。第一名员工坚称自己并没有拿走钱，但是警方调阅监视器后发现他根本就是先变装之后和另一名员工相约在台北车站，2个人是一起将钱放进置物柜。 一人拿走50万，另一人拿走200万，剩下的钱统统锁进置物柜。但老板早就发现不对，11点开始存钱，中午却没回报新进度，打电话给银行询问，才发现钱根本没存完。半小时后打电话报警。
老板报案以后，我们同仁到现场以后，然后就立即就是要求老板一直持续联络第一名去汇款的黄贤。